Mm. Okay, we are 142a, Kufman Beis Amud Aleph, towards the bottom. Towards the bottom. So we're in the middle of different opinions about if a fetus can acquire things or not. So in the middle, we brought this brisa, interesting brisa that said that a convert who dies, and now everyone goes to get his land, since it's ownerless, so they acquire it. It's hefker, it's ownerless. The problem is, what if you hear he had a son, or what if you heard he had a wife who was pregnant? So then it's no longer yours anymore. Then you find out that they die. Then you go back and you take it. So now it is yours. So what do you see from there? That a fetus could acquire. So Abai and Rava say, now if a fetus could acquire, it'd be a big difficulty on the on the opinion of Rav Sheshas. So Abai and Rava each answered different answers. Abai said that an inheritance is different than giving something over to a fetus. That was Abai. And Rava said that originally they didn't know if the convert had any relatives or not. Therefore, your original grasp on the property wasn't so strong. And that's why when it ended up being true that he did have relatives, we said you didn't really own it to begin with. So we left off saying, so what's the difference? Mai beinayu, 1, 2, 3, 6 lines from the bottom. Mai beinayu. Both Rav and Abai are saying you cannot acquire, that first time you acquired the ownerless property is no good, and you have to acquire it again. So what's the difference, whether it's because it's inheritance or because you didn't grasp well the first time? Says the Gemara, the difference is like this. What happens in a case where you heard, Ike beinayu, the difference is, Shishamu bo shemes, you heard that the fetus died. So you heard a convert died and he left his property. Before you took the property, you heard that he has a wife with a fetus. And then unfortunately you heard that the wife also died. So now what happens? After you heard that the fetus died, you went and you took the property. Perfect. What can go wrong? It ended up being it's not true. He didn't die. He's actually still alive. So after that happened, other people came and took the property. So now, according to Rava, who understood that when a convert dies and you take the property, you don't take it fully because you're not really sure if he has any kids or not. It's a weaker grasp on the property. Well, in this case, you heard he died and you heard the wife died with the fetus. So your original grasp was very strong. So you would still acquire it. However, according to Abaye, the first person who acquires it, that it wasn't really his because there was still a kid around. So only after the kid actually died, did the second people acquire it. So that would be a difference between Abaye and Rava. Okay. Tashma. Now we're going to keep attacking and going through this idea about a fetus acquiring. Tashma. So we have a Mishnah in Nida, which is going to at first seem like a difficulty, and then we're gonna a little bit do some fancy footwork to get out of it. So now, yeah, Kufman Beis 142a, 5 lines from the bottom. The last, yeah, right there. Tashma. So as we learned in the following Mishnah, Tinok ben Yomo ben Yom Echad Nochel Manchil. Case there says a father dies, he has a son who's 1 day old. That 1 day old son inherits and bequeaths. The 1 day old son receives the property upon the death of the father. And then if that 1 day old baby dies, God forbid, he also gives over that property to his brothers. So at first the Gemara says, why do you choose a case of a 1 day old? Sounds like before that, nothing doing. Ben Yom Echad in Uberlo. But a fetus cannot inherit anything. Up until now, we said a fetus could inherit. The question was could he acquire or not? But now we're saying he can't even inherit anything. So for sure it's a question of Sheshas. Not only can a fetus inherit, he can't even acquire. So for sure Rav Sheshas is wrong because Rav Sheshas is the one who said that a fetus you could actually give something over to a fetus. But what do you see from here? The Mishnah chose very carefully a case of a one-day-old child, implying only a one-day-old child could inherit, and not anybody that's less than 1 day old. What would that be? A fetus. So that seems like a very good question. So Rav Sheshes, so Ha'amar Rav Sheshes, anyways, over there were different questions on the Mishnah, and we had to interpret the Mishnah a little bit differently. So what was the question on the Mishnah over there? So it's a little bit, Nida, about the Gemara Nida, we'll have to see at the very end, but the Gemara understood it to be that the 1 day old inherits from his father and bequeaths to his brothers. So if that's true, it doesn't really teach me anything about it. If the Mishnah just tells me that let's say you have Yaakov has a bunch of children, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. So you have Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, and Yehuda's 1 day old. And you're teaching me that you should know that that the 1 day old will inherit, and then he'll give over to his brothers if he dies. So even if there wasn't a 1 day old, you can say the same halacha. The father dies, it goes to the children. What's the second step? The father dies, it goes to the 1 day old, and the 1 day old's portion will go to the brothers. That's not necessary. So you know how inheritance works already from Bava Batra. So why did the Mishnah tell me that it's a 1 day old gets it, and when he dies, he gives it to his brothers? That's great. And if he wasn't around, the brothers would get it. So there's no added novelty. So because of that question, Rav Sheshes says that anyways we have to interpret the Gemara differently. So Amar Rav Sheshes, the case is like this: Nochel v'nichse ha'em lahanchil la'achin mina'av. A unique case that there was the same way. Yaakov had a bunch of sons, like in the Chumash. So some shared, Reuben and Shimon shared, a father with Yosef, except they didn't share a mother. Reuben and Shimon came from Leah, and Yosef came from Rachel. So now Rachel gave birth to Yosef. Now, if Rachel dies, so then Yosef inherits his mother, right? So now imagine Rachel gives birth to Yosef, and Yosef is 1 day old. If Rachel were to die, so then Yosef inherits the property. And now, if Yosef dies, so then he's going to give it over to Reuben and Shimon, who are his paternal siblings. Okay. Now, good morning, Jared. Okay, so now, so now let's see. So Amar Sheshes Nochel b'nichse ha'im lahanchil la'achin mina'av. This only works. So once again, Yaakov has 2 wives, Rachel and Leah. Yaakov has Reuben and Shimon. From Leah, Rachel has Yosef. So now, Rachel dies. Yosef's going to inherit her. However, and then when Yosef dies, he's going to give over his inheritance to the brothers. Now, okay. Now that's only true the dafka ben yom echad aval uberla. The Mishnah is saying the only way that the paternal brother will give this over to his paternal brothers is only if he is 1 day old. But if it was a fetus, it's not going to work. So why not? Yeah. So let's see. Let's see why not. Aval uberla, my time. I'm turning the page. So why can't, meaning my time, what's the reason that only if Rachel gave birth to Yosef, even if he's 1 day old, then and only then if she dies, and then he dies, it's going to go to the brothers. Why can't it be that Rachel dies, she has a fetus, she dies, the fetus inherits, then the fetus dies, and the brothers get the portion? Why does it have to be that Yosef has to be 1 day old? Why can't he be in utero? And the same halacha should be true. Sounds like Rav Sheshes who is of agreement that a fetus could acquire. Rav Sheshes agrees that a fetus could acquire. So if you, Rav Sheshes, agreed that a fetus could acquire, so why, according to you, did that Mishnah choose a case where you have to be 1 day old? Why can't you be a fetus and acquire? On that, says the Gemara, interesting, that dehu mayis beresha, ve'ein haben yerush imo bekever, lahanchi la'avim and av. The Gemara is assuming now that the reason is because when a mother is pregnant, and the different cases like that we're gonna have later in, it says here 16 daf, if the house falls on both of them, God forbid, right? So now we're assuming that the fetus dies first. He's the first one to die, and then the mother. And the fetus can't acquire the mother in the grave, which is a fancy way of saying that if you die first, obviously you can't acquire it. So that's why Rav Sheshes said it's only if the kid is 1 day old will he inherit his mother, and then if he dies at 1 day old, he'll bequeath it to his brothers. But if he was in utero, so then he never got the inheritance from his mother. Not because the fetus can't get an inheritance. He could get an inheritance. That's Rav Sheshes. It's just because he died first. That's why he learns the Mishnah that way. Okay. So now, the Gemara says, I know I found this interesting. L'meimer de humai is beresha. You're telling me he died first, but there was a case, l'havi uvda, there was a case where the mother died, upirchas tlata perchuse, and the kid, what's it called when a chicken dies and it's still moving around?
Oh.
Whatever they translate it as. That's what it means to be mefarches. Mefarches means even after the mother died, the kid thrashing around. Okay, thrashing. So after the mother died, the kid was still thrashing around 3 times. So the Gemara says, look, if you're right, it's always true that a kid dies first. So then, look, it's not true. I don't know. The way I understood it was he's just saying at least it should be a suffix. Meaning, how do you say for sure? I had a case that happened. The mother died, and the kid was still thrashing around. So in a case of an inheritance, maybe it should be it's my own. Maybe it should be at least a dad or something. I mean, you can't say for sure. So Amr Rav Ashi, no, that's not a good proof. Why? It's like the tail of a lizard that after it died, it thrashes around. Meaning the thrashing around is not a sign of life. Thrash around, that's what happens sometimes. Same way with the chicken. Sometimes that's just what happens. Doesn't mean it's alive. It means it's like the after effect. Okay, that's good for Rav Sheshes. Now, once we brought that Mishnah, so we're now going to bring another interpretation of that Mishnah in Nida. Mar Breder of Yosef is going to say, Mishmei de Rava says in the name of Rava that really meaning maybe she does die first and the fetus dies second, and really the fetus could acquire. Does a Mishnah choose a case of a 1 day old? For the following reason. Mar Breder of Yosef Mishmei de Rava Amar Lomer Shememait Bechelek Bechora. So this is interesting. I drew it out this morning, but my paper here. So let's try to figure it out. So let's give a case. What was the case I had this morning? The case was you had 2 brothers, Reuben and Shimon, and you have this third kid who's either going to be in utero or 1 day old. Now you have 12. I think this is the response because you have 12 manas, right? So let's say you have $12. So Reuben and Shimon. Reuben's the firstborn. So how you can divide it up? So whenever you divide up the Bechor, so you pretend as if there's 3 brothers, because the Bechor gets a double portion. So 12 divided by 3 is 4, right? So Reuben's going to get his firstborn portion is 4. A regular portion as a regular person. So then he's going to 8. And Shimon will get the other 4, right? Now, what happens if there is a 1 day old baby? Well, if it's 1 day old baby, so he's going to take away from the Bechor. So you're going to divide up into 4 now, not 3. Right now you have 3 kids: Reuben, Shimon, and baby Levi. Right. Mm-hmm. So now what's going to happen? You're going to take 12 and divide it into 4 portions. So it's going to be 3. What's going to happen? Reuben's going to get 3 for being a firstborn, 3 for being regular, and then the other 2 brothers, Shimon and Levi, are going to get 3 each. So in this example, Reuben gets 6, and they're each going to get 3. Now. So what do you see? Reuben was going to get 8, and now he only gets 6. The 1 day old takes away from his bechor. Says the Gemara, that's dafka ben yomecha. Aval uber lo. But if you're an uber, so what happens? Remember, we're holding now that a fetus does inherit. If a fetus doesn't inherit, nothing to talk about. But now how's it going to work? You have Reuben and Shimon, and you have a baby fetus, right? The doctor asks you, I don't know what it's going to be. Baby fetus, yeah, and you haven't chosen a name yet for the baby fetus. Fine. So how are you gonna do it? You have 12 mana. So now Reuben. So now you pretend like the fetus doesn't exist. So you just divide up the 12 the way you would if there was no fetus. So what would you do? You divide it up 12 into 3 portions, and Reuben would get 8 off the bat, right? 8 off the bat. 4 for being sorry.
No.
He would get 4. 4 as his bechor portion.
Oh.
4 is his bechor portion. Now, how much was he get as a regular portion? Well, now the Uber's back in the picture, right? So now the remaining 8, this is how it goes, will be divided up. Will be divided up into 3. It will divide up into 3. Other 8 will be divided into 3, which means you're gonna get 2 and 2/3. Good. Now you're going to get 2 and 2/3. So now the bechor will get 4 plus 2 and 2/3. He's going to, yeah, I think that's going to be the case. So, but the point is that the bechor gets 4 off the bat. That's never going to go down. If it's a 1 day old, he won't get 4 off the bat. He'll get 3 off the bat because we take into consideration. Yeah. So now, my time, why is that true? Why doesn't a fetus detract from the firstborn portion? A fetus could acquire, he could inherit. We're going in the world of Rav Sheshas. My time, because when the psukim, when the verses talk about inheritance, it says v'yolda lo amar Rachmana. He'll get a double portion of the son that's born to him. So it has to be, so whoever is born to him, the kids that are born now, from there you will take a double portion. But the fact that there's a fetus, he's not born now. Therefore, when you are giving out the double portion, you don't take the fetus into account, even though he will inherit like the rest of the brothers. What?
Seems like he's still born to him. He's still going to carry his name. Still going to be Ben so and so.
So someone asks you, it says he has to be born to him. So Jared, is the fetus born or no?
He will be born
right now. Right, sign on the dotted line. No yeshiva logic over here, Jared. Yes or no? Is he born or no?
No.
No, good. So that's that.
It's
So,
black and white.
The Yoldalo, it has to be born to him. No, but you're right. It is. It is. That's why he is in the middle, because he does inherit, right? He's a something. Now, yeah, he is a something, but not a something enough for certain rules. Yes, you're right. You're right. So Amar Rachman. So we have Amar Rachman. So now the Amar Mar Breder of Yosef Mishmei de Rava. So Ben Shenola La'achar Misas Aviv, a son that's born after the death of the father, Eino Mamait Bechelik Bechora. So you have once again Reuben and Shimon. They're born with the father. Then the mother's pregnant, father dies, and then the child's born. Says Mar, the son of Rav Yosef, in the name of Rava, that son is also not going to detract from the Bechora, which means right now you have Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, but Levi never lived together with his father. He was born afterwards. Father died in the 8th month of pregnancy, whatever, 7th month of pregnancy. Then the wife gave birth. So once again, when it comes to the firstborn portion, you just see Reuben and Shimon. So back to our example of 12, you divide up into 3. Reuben will take 4 off the bat. But now you bring Levi back into the picture, and he'll get like the rest of the brothers. But he won't take away from the horse. So also, why not? Now, once again, logically, you wouldn't say this, but when it turns to the V'yaldalo, right, it's going to defy logic in a certain aspect, and that's going to happen. So this also, so we're asking on this also, Ma'i Taima. I don't know, 99.9% of the time when you have Ma'i Taima, it's because it needs a reason. Because logically, you wouldn't say this. Right now you have 3 kids. Who cares when was born? What? 3 kids now, and there's an inheritance. So my timer says they want to v'yol delo amar rachmana v'haleka. Same thing has to be the v'yol delo in the same lifetime as the father that were born to him. The father died. The kid wasn't born to him. Now he was born to his family, but it wasn't born to him. The haleka. So once again, this is there's a language my Rebbe used to always quote from one of the Rishonim is that often the logic of the Torah it says the opposite of a logic of a human brain, right? And he always said you have to fit your brain trying to understand the logic of the Torah because it's divine wisdom. So whenever you have these psukim, you're right. It's hard for the head to understand. That's the point. You have to try to figure it out now. Yeah. So, okay. So now, Besura Masnuhake. That was very nice in Surah, how they taught it. The Pumpadisa Masnuhake. A little bit, they quoted a different verse. But they both agree it's a verse. Amar Breder of Yosef Mishmei de Rava B'chor Shno La'achar Mitzaviv. So he said in the name of Rava, same person. Mar Breder, there is a name of Rava. B'chor Shno La'achar Mitzaviv Ein Notel Pishnayim. A firstborn child born after the death of the father does not receive a double portion. My time, but why not? It says Yakir. He has to recognize him. The father has to recognize him. Amar Rachmana v'halesa. He was never in the world to recognize him. The halesa the Yakir. He wasn't. There's no one here now to recognize him. The father, unfortunately, has passed. The hilchasa kehol hani lishid amar Rebbe Rav Yosef mishmei de Rava, and the halakha is going to go like all the statements that were said from Mar Breder of Yosef in the name of Rava. Okay, very good. Amr Rabbi Yitzchak, Amr Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yitzchak says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Hamizake le'uber lo kana. If you want to give something over to a fetus, no can do. So here, finally, the Rashbam gives at least his explanation. It could be meant others argue with him, but he says because when you give something over to somebody who's not in the world anymore, you don't really give it over with your full heart. That's the Rashbam's explanation. Interesting. An acquisition has to be wholehearted. When you give something over to somebody, so you usually have to do a kinyan. To somehow do an acquisition. You have to see that you're serious about this. Certain times you need 2 witnesses, like by marriage. They're really serious about it, right? Okay. So now you want to give something over, Portland water over to a fetus, yeah? So the answer is low kana, not because it's Portland water, because it's a fetus. The im tomer Mishnah seinu. What's with our Mishnah? Our Mishnah says you can give over $200 if it's a girl and $100 if it's a boy. Our Mishnah implies that a fetus does acquire. So no, a big difference. Since a person is very close to his child, so even though by a regular unborn person, we don't see that you're really serious about it. When you give something over to someone who's not born yet, who said you're doing it with your whole heart? I mean, he's not around anymore. He's not around at all. He's not around yet. However, when you're giving to your children who aren't around yet, to a fetus, there, in general, a person is much closer to his children. He thinks about them more. He cares about them more, hopefully. So therefore, he will give over even to a fetus. We don't say, well, I know it's not with a full heart. To your children, it is with a full heart. And if it's not until now, now it will be. So yeah, Amar le Shmuel Rav Chana begadita. So he told her, Rav Shmuel said to Rav Chanan from Begadita, I don't know if it's Baghdad, I don't know what it is, from a place Begadita, Huk Aisili Be'asara, go bring me 10 people, the Aimer Loch Ba'apayu, and I want to say in front of 10 people, Hamazakil Uber Kana, if you can, that when someone gives something over to an Uber, he does acquire. Meaning, this was a halacha that wasn't so well known. Maybe it was debated. Get me 10 people. Let's publicize this. Front page news of the New York Times. I don't know. Yeah, for once, so something different. So page 2 will be against this. Whole page 1 will be that I'm a Zakila Uber Kana. Yeah. So
Where do you
sorry, though, I don't know what the newspaper is. The Portland Times. I don't know. So in the end of Rus, the last chapter, Boaz did this. Boaz got people together, everyone together, teach the halacha that a female Moabite could marry in. Why to get everyone together? To publicize it, because they weren't sure, they thought it wasn't allowed. So you see such a concept. However, at the end of the day, the halacha accords with the opinion that you cannot give over to a fetus. So if someone asks you, a very common case, can you give things over to a fetus? You tell them no. Yeah. So now, Hahud could happen in the fire station. I don't know. So Hahud Amr Lebitu, you told a person told his wife. So now, okay, now we're getting into a whole discussion. So Jules is going to have the same question as he always has. Why can't people speak normally? So this is another example. We're going to speak not normally, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. That's why they do it, just for us. Hahud Amr Lebitu, a guy told his wife, listen, Nechasai, my belongings are going to go, Lebanai dehavu li minach. I'm going to give my property to the children, the Yehavu li minach, to the children that you have from me. Meaning, so now the woman wasn't pregnant. The woman wasn't even pregnant yet, right? And he wants to give over his property to the children that she will have from him. Okay, so maybe we're not. Yeah, I jumped the gun. We're not yet by the funny speaking. Hold on, let's see. They're coming soon. So Asa now. Okay, so now it happened. Asa Brei Kashisha. So now the older son, I think it's from a previous, from the first wife. So a guy was married once and he had a son. Marriage didn't work out. We're sorry. Second marriage, the wife's not even pregnant yet, but I guess he's very excited in this relationship. And he says, I'm going to give, don't worry, all my property to all our future children that hopefully we will have soon together. So now, the older son from the first marriage comes, Asa Brei Kashisha, Amar Le, so Amar Le, Hahu Gavra, 1 second. So he says, listen, I want some property. Like, listen, Dad, you're getting old, and I want some property. So Asa Brei Kashisha. So Amar Le, Hahu Gavra, my Tahavi Aleha. I think what it means is, can I get a portion too? That I want a portion too. So Amar Le, the father says, Zil Kani Kichad Mibra. You, son, from the first marriage, you will acquire the property like one of the other children. So now, what's the halacha? Hanach vade lo kanu. The children that haven't even become fetuses yet have for sure not acquired anything. That kasi lesnu. But this older son from the other marriage, so meaning like this. The guy has property now. So he wants to give some of his property now to his son, just like the rest of his sons. So the gift he's giving now to his son, obviously the other children who aren't even in utero yet, for sure don't get. But now, what happens when the guy dies? Okay. So now, how do you view it? Do you say, is chol v'talya b'makom b'naya, or lesle chol v'talya b'makom b'naya? So now, so the son that was alive, the father promised him a portion of his property. So now, he said, you could have like one of my sons. What did he mean by that? You can have one portion now, after that. Then when he dies, you're going to split up the rest of the inheritance. And this older son will get one present, one part of the inheritance, right now, because he promised them. And he'll get, so let's say again, 3 sons. So he's the oldest, Reuben, then there's Shimon and Levi. And there's 4 portions to give out. So how do you view it? He gives him one portion, and the other 3 portions, they divide a 3-way. Or he just meant to say, you get a portion like one of my sons, meaning you're going to inherit the same as them. And we'll divide up the portions evenly, 3-way, instead of 4-way. So when he promised him right now property, did he mean to say, you get something now in addition to what you will get? Meaning you'll get something now, and like my sons, you will get like they will get. Or no, this is the portion. You're going to get like everyone else. Meaning you don't get a portion in addition to your regular portion. You get a regular portion like everybody else. Yeah. There's Ram examples is if you have 3 sons, you have 4 sons, 3 that are kind of come from the second wife, and the oldest one that comes from the first wife. So if you divide it up into 4 portions now, so you'll give the oldest son 1 portion, and now do you divide up the other 3 portions into fourths because it's like a regular inheritance, or no? He gets his portion, and the other 3 get their portion. So that's the question of the Gemara. So Rabbi Avin, Rabbi Maisha, Rabbi Yirmiyah, so they all said the following: the Amri is cholek letalia b'makom benaya. They said, yeah, he does get a portion in the place of the sons. He gets a portion in addition to his portion. Yeah. Rabbi Abo, Rabbi Chanina bar Papi, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. 3 on the other side say the Amri less cholek letalia b'makom benaya. He doesn't get, in their place, meaning in addition to them. He gets with them. It's divided up equally. So now, Amar Rabbi Abo, Rabbi Yirmiyah. So hold on. Hilchasa kivasan or hilchasa kivasaychu. He says, so Rabbi Abahu, who was from the second group that said that he gets a regular portion like everybody else. So now Rabbi Abahu is asking Rabbi Yirmiyah, who's from the first group that said he gets an additional portion, is the halacha like us? Is the halacha like you? Who is the halacha like? So Amar Lei told him back, Pshita the hilchas kivasan. For sure the halacha is like us, that he gets an additional portion. Why? It's interesting. The kashishina minaychu. We're older than you. Respect your elders. So the lav hilchas kivasaychu did dardikiyasun. Because you guys are youngsters.
You don't know anything.
Yeah, you don't know. So you're youngsters. Halacha is like us. So he stays strong in his opinion. Doesn't give up hope. Doesn't start crying, run away. Amarle midi b'kashishus Italian milsa b'time Italian milsa. Like, have you learned Gemara before? We don't go by age. We go by reasoning. I want to know whose reasoning is more correct, my reasoning or your reasoning. So now, b'time amai. What's the reason that what is the reason? So I think we're asking what's the reason that he should get. Let's see. What's the reason? So the time of mine. So he said, okay, so tell me, like, what is the reason? So he said, listen, Zilla Gabid Rabbi Oven, you have to go to Rabbi Oven, and there's Brat and Yehole. He'll explain to you the reasoning. So the Karkish Ba Resha, and he nodded his head. The Karkish Be Resha Be Midrasha. And I think in the base medrash, he nodded his head, meaning he agreed to him. Okay, fine. I'll go and I'll find out. Also, Legabe, he went to Rabbi Oven for an explanation. So Rabbi Oven told him back like this. He says, he gave an example. Amrle. So here we go with all the different ways how to speak. So Amrle, Ilu Amrle, you should acquire like your donkey. Right? You go to a guy, you want to buy a car from him, that you should acquire this car like a donkey. So Ilo Amrle Kani Kichamor, Mi Kani, would you acquire? So too, when you tell this guy, the son, you're gonna acquire like one of my children who's not even in utero yet. That's the same as saying you should acquire like a donkey, and a donkey doesn't acquire. So too, you, son, do not acquire anything more than the rest of your brothers. So that's the reason why he's going to receive the same inheritance as everybody else. Nothing special. So just like the sons have never come to the world yet, don't acquire. So that's what the guy was saying. When you acquire like one of my children, what it means is like a donkey. So now we're going to bring this not so clear. If he tells someone to acquire like a donkey, it's not so clear that he doesn't acquire. So here's where Jules' question comes in. Why would someone say this? And if he said this, why don't we ask him what he meant? Okay, he said this, and he flew away from town. So Amar Lei Kani Kichamor. So mi Kani de Itmar Kani Kichamor lo Kana. If you say Kani Kichamor, you should acquire like a donkey. For sure, you have not acquired. Now, at vichamor, not so simple. You and the donkey should acquire. So what does that mean? You and the donkey should acquire. So Rav Nachman Amar, yeah, you acquire half, the other half donkey can't acquire. What I mean to say is, whatever you could acquire, you could acquire. So you and the donkey could acquire. So you take half, and the donkey takes half. Okay, donkey can't take half, but it's a way of saying that you get half. Rav Hamnuna says, Lo Amar Kulam. If the donkey can't acquire, so when you put two people in one sentence and one of them can't acquire, then nobody could acquire, right? Maybe like Jules would say, because if he wanted to actually give him something, he just say you should acquire. The fact that he put a donkey into the picture shows that he doesn't want to give it to him. So now we have a machlokes when a guy says you and a donkey. Now, really, the reason why it's good to go through this case is because we're going to see different cases where you're going to not use a donkey as an example. You use other factors which are going to be similar to the extreme example of you and a donkey. Let's see what those are. So once again, At v'chamor of Nachman says kana mechzer, Rav Nuna Amar lo Amar klum, and Rosh Hashanah, just like we had a daf ago, he says kana hakol. The fact that a donkey means nothing. You and a donkey should acquire means you acquire everything, because you know that a donkey can't acquire. So if you know that a donkey can't acquire, so I'm giving over to the person everything. It's just a way of speaking. So now you have three opinions. Either you get half, nothing, or everything. Yeah. So now, Amar of Sheshes, how do I know that when you acquire to somebody and something else which cannot acquire, or somebody else which cannot acquire, what you mean to do is give that one person everything? How do I know? The Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Ein lecha mar bekishus ella panimi shabo. Okay, so now it's a little bit complicated, but when it comes to truma, so at least rabbinically, we there's three different. You should take off 1/50. So you have 50 apples. In this case, it's a vegetable, some kind of melon called a kishus. I don't know what they have a fancy word for it. I don't know what it means. A chenta melon? I don't know. Have you ever seen a chenta melon? No. Jules, you ever saw a chenta melon? Okay, maybe a cucumber. Anyways, it's a kind of vegetable, some kind of melon. Let's say some kind of melon. So now, if you're going to have 50 of them, so you have to take off 1/50th. Now, the problem is that there's part of this melon that's very bitter. The inner part is going to be very bitter. So now let's say like 2% of the melon is very bitter and 8% is going to be sweet. So now the problem is that you're not allowed to take off bad produce onto good produce, right? You can't take off bad onto good. So when you took off this melon, so the inner part of the melon is very sour. So now, if you look at it, that means that only a part of this melon is sweet. And when you take it off, compared to the rest of the fruit, you haven't taken off 1/50th, because percentage-wise, it's only 1/50th minus a little bit, because part of this melon is very sour. So you have to be worried for that. So therefore, you have to add a little bit more sweetness. Make sure that you get 1/50th of sweetness taken off, because you can't take off bad fruit from good fruit. Take off only from good fruit. No? Yeah?
It just seems like every melon's gonna have a piece of bitter in it, right?
I had that question. Yeah. I had that same question.
Like the fetus, how do you know what's in there? I don't know.
Right?
Right. So the Rambam says you have to be worried for it. You should be worried that since part of this melon is going to be sour and there's much more sweet than sour, so therefore, when you look at the total, you're going to have less than 1/50th. And what's going to happen? You're going to end up taking off truma from a mar al hamatok, from sour onto sweet. So therefore, when you're taking off this melon, you should add a little bit more. Therefore, there's a lot of sweetness, and there you for sure took off enough. You're right. I was bothered by the same thing, meaning if you're worried about in every melon, so that's going to be, yeah.
How are you going to know how big the portion is until you cut it off?
Oh, okay, good. Baruch Shekivanta. I'm looking now. Toast to ask your question. He says, Tema, it's a big wonderment. What in the world is Gemara saying? Kevin de Bechol Kishuin. All of these vegetables, melons, all of them are sour inside and sweet on the outside. So why can you take this from that? So the outside should what happens like this? The sour part should make the other produce no longer tevel, right? And the sweet part should make the sweet parts no longer tevel. Until you take off truma, everything is tevel. It's called tevel. You don't know how to eat it. So just do sour will obliviate the sour, and the sweet will take from the sweet. Okay, good. My timetable, look into it. Very good. Yes, Tosis Kasha. Should probably sponsor Kiddush Shabbos. No. So yeah. So now, okay, that's the Gemara's assumption. Jared, question of the day. Week. Okay, let's see. So now, so Amai, so says the Gemara, hold on. So Amai, it's a similar case to Tv'chomer. You and the donkey should acquire, right? What are you basically saying? Something which is not good, something which is good. So sour and the sweet. That should be the same as you and a donkey should acquire. According to Rav Sheshis, you acquire everything. So to here also everything should be acquired. So why isn't it not the same? So obviously, when you take off this truma, what's the difference between this case, which is not going to work, and at v'chamor, which is going to work? So says the Gemara, no. You can't really bring this as a good example. So much so that what was the Gemara thinking in the beginning? But shiny hasam, because listen, biblically, it's totally fine to take a bad from good. If you take a bad fruit from the good fruits, it's still going to be good as truma. How do I know? Shiny hasam the midaraisa truma mal yasahi. Biblically, it's totally fine. You can take off the bad from the good. How do I know? The Amar Rabbi Yila, it says minayin l'torah min hara alayafa. How do I know that take off from the bad to the good is going to be good truma? Truma shenamar. The Torah says, listen, don't carry sin don't carry sin. Rather, take off the good. Take off the best truma. Meaning, if you take off the bad, it would be carrying a sin. But it's only carrying a sin if it actually works. If taking off bad from good does nothing, then you did nothing. You didn't carry a sin. That's what the Gemara says. From there you see that from the fact that it says take off the good and don't carry a sin. If you take off from the bad, you would carry a sin, which means that it would be good truma. It would work biblically, not preferable. Therefore, you see that you can't compare the two cases because truma anyways works. So it wouldn't be a good case. We'll review this last part.